Welcome back to our tutorial for basic beginners in C Sharp programming. In the previous tutorial, we looked at, or in the previous lesson, we looked at variables and data types. So we saw the different types of data types. That's the standard data types in C Sharp. We saw, I think we saw int, we saw bool, we saw string, and we saw float also. I think there's one other one we saw. Anyway, we looked at. I recommend you take a look at the previous video. That's lesson 3 if you want to learn more about data types. Just look at the previous video if you haven't. That is if you're a complete beginner in C Sharp. So today, what we're going to look at is we're going to look at how we can interact with our user. Remember, in a program, usually when you write a program, I told you a program is a set of commands that you give the computer. However, even though as a programmer you write commands and feed to the computer, in the commands you write, there are some commands that you give the computer whereby you expect a user sitting on the computer to respond or to provide inputs for some of the commands that you give the computer. I think maybe if we after this lesson you'll understand what I mean. Let's go ahead and open our previous our program that we've written. So we have it inside, if you remember, it's on our desktop inside the my apps folder. My first app, we double click that. So this is the solution, my first app.sl, and this is the solution. I'll just double click on that and Visual Studio will automatically load and open my solution, and there we have our program. So in case you open the program and this is closed, that is everywhere, you're having a blank screen here, remember, always go to your solution explorer on your right. You double click on program.cs. Sometimes this might be also fold up, that is closed. All you're seeing is my first app. Just click on this triangle to expose the contents of my first app, and then there you have dependencies and then program.cs. So you double click on program.cs and you will have your code back. Good. So this is where we are. If you remember, like I said in the previous lesson, we looked at variables and data types. Of course, variables are just like I told you, they are just like a box where you store items or you store data, and then you can use the data later in your program. So you can recall and say, give me back my data that I stored, and you can use it later. So today we're going to look at oh yes, I've already said it. I said we're going to look at interacting with the user. So the first thing we're going to look at is how do we communicate to a user of our program. Okay, we're going to look at how do we provide information to a user of our program. Now, if you look at the program scope, like I explained before I opened Visual Studio, the way you design a program, I mean, nobody would like a program where you just run the program and you just sit and the program just runs from start to finish, right? Like, okay, let me give you an example. Like, for example, let's say Microsoft Word, for example. If you open Microsoft Word is a program, right? So let's oh, I don't have Microsoft Word. Let's say Notepad, for example. Notepad is a program. If you run Notepad, okay, so I've run Notepad. Notepad is running now. Right now the program is executing, right? However, there are some things the user would like to provide, like inputs. In your program, there are sometimes you want input from the user. So for example, if I press on the R keyboard on my on the R key on my keyboard, R appears all of a sudden. R appears in the, so this like interacting with your user. That's the creator of this notepad program made it in such a way that if the user presses on the key, on the R key, it responds, that's the program responds by displaying R, that's the letter R, on this let's say on this space, right? And then the user can also click on something like file, and then he gets a couple of menu, like there's new window, each of whichever one he clicks on, another set of commands of the program is run. If you get what I mean, this is just like interacting with the user. Okay, so the creator of this program has provided code or instructions that get run or that get executed whenever the user does one or two things. So he gets input from the user, and the program responds based on the inputs of the user. So for example, if I press on the S key on the keyboard, S all of a sudden appears there, right? And whatever I press, it responds by, I know this might look like, what is he saying? Like, it doesn't really make sense, but really, if you think about it, that's how the whole interaction is more like interaction between the user and the program, okay, or the user and the computer, and the program is kind of in between the user and the computer. So this notepad is kind of how do I put it? It's like an intermediary. Okay, it's a program, but it's kind of an intermediary between a user that's sitting at the keyboard and the computer. Okay, so it kind of responds, it if the user does anything on the keyboard, or he moves his mouse and click on the file menu, it kind of, the program provides feedback to the computer and tells the computer, okay, execute this set of instructions based on what the user has done. Okay, so the user provides input to the computer. Let's go back to our program. I'll just close Notepad. I just hope that makes some sense. Okay, so now the first thing we're going to look at is how do we display information to the user of our program. Now we're going to do that via the console. That's console, console. If you remember at the beginning of our application, we said this was a console application. Okay, so that is why we're going to be interacting via the console. Okay, you might be wondering, what is the console? The console is just like DOS. Do you know disk operating system? DOS. If you just go to the start menu and type on DOS, you'll see an option that comes up, command prompt. Okay, that is, or it's called DOS prompt. That is what the console looks like actually. So this is actually what the console looks like. If you've used a computer around the year probably 19 in the late 80s, okay, in the late 80s, if you have used any Windows if you have used any Microsoft operating system, it looks like this. Okay, so whatever you do, you just type in your commands, and then the commands get executed. So this is what the console looks like. I'll just go ahead and close that. I just wanted you to see what the console looks like. So if you would like to provide information to the user of your program, you usually use the console in a console application. So how do we do that? So suppose we want to say hello user, like we just want to display um, hello user to the user of our application. How do we do that? Now, this is how you do it. You start with a capital C, console dot write line, and then this is a very good pitfall. Remember, C sharp is case sensitive, so the console starts with a capital C, and then every other letter is a small letter, and then you follow it with a full stop. And then once you put the full stop, Visual Studio will provide a couple of options. If you see, there are options. These are like the members of the console. Anyway, don't worry too much about this, because we're supposed to look at things like this, things like these in when we've covered classes. So don't worry too much. Just know that the write line method is what you use when you want to display information to the user of your application. Now, the way you write the write line is you start with a capital W, and then RITE are all small letters, and then a capital L, and then you finish off with INE. That's small letter I, small letter N, small letter E. You open a normal bracket. The moment you put the first open bracket, the closing bracket, Visual Studio will automatically write the closing bracket for you. Now, this is the method you use to provide information to the user in your console application. However, you have to, what you want to be displayed is what you provide in between this open bracket and this closing bracket. Now, still, you don't just write anything. Okay, for example, I can't just write hello user in here and then end with a semicolon. This is an error. Why? Because this, what you are supposed to provide in between this open bracket and close bracket, has to be defined. What I mean by defined is it has to be either a string. You remember what a string is? If you look at the previous lesson, lesson 3, you'll see what a string is. So it has to be either a literal string or a string a string variable or an int variable. Okay. Anyway, the reason why you can have different types of data types in here is because this write line method is overloaded. Now, don't worry too much about the word overloaded. In fact, just forget everything I've said. Just know that what you're supposed to write in between here has to be enclosed in quotation marks. Okay, so it has to, you have to open a quotation, double quote, and then close a double quote, and then in between the open and closing of double quote, you can now type whatever you want to be displayed. Now, this is a literal string. Remember, this is how a literal string is written. A literal string is written in between double quotes. So you open a double quote and then close a double quote. In between it, whatever you write in between those two double quotes is a literal string. Now, let's go ahead and don't forget the semicolon at the end of your statement. Now let's look at this program. What all we have inside this program, remember, execution starts inside static void main. What the statement we have inside there is saying console.writeLine hello user as a literal string. So all we're telling the computer, or all the instruction we're giving the computer here, is we're saying display on the console this, whatever I write here is what is going to be displayed on the console. I hope that makes sense. I know it's a lot of explanation just for this, but I just want you to grasp how you display information to the user. So let's go ahead and run this program and see what happens. So to run your program, remember you can come up here where it says my first app. You see a green play button. You can click on that, or you can go to project, build, and okay, forget about build. You can go to debug actually, and then under debug you'll see start debugging, and the shortcut is F5. So you can click on that and the program will be run. So this is what I'm saying. Remember our MS-DOS prompt. This is what the DOS prompt looks like. And now if you look at inside this command prompt window, you will see that at the beginning, the first thing it writes is hello user, and then you get a bunch of code there. Don't worry about what is written underneath here. This is just what gets written when the program has terminated. So the program has finished executing. That's why all this gibberish is written. Don't worry too much about that. This is what we are interested in. This is where your program was run. You can see what is written there, hello user, and the program terminates. Okay, and it says press any key to close this window. So let's go ahead and press a key. Now that just means that your program ran and the string hello user was displayed to the user. Okay, let's change that just to make my point. Let's change what's written here. Let's type in hello everyone and see what, in fact, let's include an exclamation point. Now let's run this program and see what happens. You see exactly what I put in between the double quotes of console.writeline. That is what gets displayed, hello everyone, with an exclamation mark. Okay, I hope this makes sense. Now this is how you you provide information to your user via the console. Okay, let's look at other things you can do. So let's see what else can we do. We can actually write another console dot write line. Okay, and then in between we say how are you feeling today, and always don't forget at the end of your statement, at the end of every statement in your program, you have to include an exclamation point. You have to include a semicolon. Okay, sorry. Okay, let's go ahead and run that. And what do we get? We get hello everyone, and then on the next line we get how are you feeling today. Okay, now that is how you run, that is how you display information to your user. Okay, now another thing I'm going to show you is, remember this lesson is all about interacting with your user. The next thing I would like to display before I end this lesson is how do you get input from the user. Okay, what we've just done is we've provided output, and we've provided information to the user, which is an output. Okay, the program provides output to the user. How do we provide input? That is, how do we get information from the user and then we kind of wrap it and take it into our program such that we can use it? For example, how do we ask the user for his name and then collect that name? Okay, so first of all, let's change this how are you feeling to what is your name. Remember, if we run this program, what we'll see is hello everyone, what is your name? Okay, let's terminate that. Now I want us to use console dot read line. Now this console.readline is the method that is used when you want to get information or when you want to get input from the user. Okay, in your program, when you write console.readline, what you're telling the computer is the user is going to type information. Whatever the user types, you're going console.readline is going to return that information. Now, when this information gets returned, remember you're supposed to keep it, right? How do we keep that? We usually keep it in a variable. If you remember our previous lesson, a variable is like a store where we can keep information or keep data. Now, the best type of variable we can use, that's the data type of the variable we can use to collect information from the user. The best type in this case is going to be a string data type. So let's use a string, string, string. Sorry, I'll do that on the line just before the console.readline. So I'm going to create a variable. Remember how we create our variables? We first write the data type. So the data type for this variable is string, and then the name of the variable. That's what we're going to use as the handle. So like what we'll use to keep the data that we're going to collect, and then whenever we want to use that data, we'll call on that name. Okay, we call on that whatever we provide here. So we're going to call this user name. Notice how I wrote the username. I start with a small u, a small s, a small e, a small r, and then a capital N, a small a, m, e, username, and then I end it with a semicolon. Okay, so now I just created a data type. I created a variable username which stores string, that's literal strings, and then down here where I say console.readline, I'm going to say user name and then a space. I put one equal symbol and then follow it with console.readline, and then I terminate this statement with a semicolon. Now, what is this saying? What we're doing here is we're saying take whatever is on the right hand side. If you remember our variables in lesson 3, whenever you see a variable name followed by an equal sign and then followed by an equal symbol and then some expression on the right hand side, what it does is it takes whatever is on the right hand side and then store it inside the variable that's on the left hand side. Okay, so whatever at this point in our program, the program is going to stop, it's going to halt and wait for the user to type in some information. And then when the user finishes typing his information, he's going to press enter. After that enter, whatever the user types is going to be stored inside this variable, username variable. Now let me show you why we're storing it inside the username variable, so that we can do something like this: console dot write line. So we're just using this method again, but this time instead of writing a literal string, we're going to use this variable, this username. Okay, or okay, let's use a literal string, hello, and then we add a plus symbol, which is a concatenation, hello, a space here, hello, and then user name, then end it with a semicolon. Okay, what is happening here? If you look at this, it's very similar to this line. However, there is a slight difference. The difference is that we're using a plus symbol here. Okay, now what happens here is we're taking a string, a literal string, hello, that is enclosed in double quotes, okay, and then we're concatenating this plus symbol. When you use a plus symbol in between strings, what you are doing is you are concatenating, you're like joining them, okay. So it takes whatever is here and join it to whatever is here. Now remember, this is a variable name. The variable name, whenever you write a variable name, what you are telling the computer is take whatever is inside, whatever is stored inside there, and then replace it with this variable name. So we're taking whatever is inside that variable name, that's whatever is stored inside this variable, is going to be concatenated with this hello. So if the user typed Fatima here, for example, Fatima is going to be attached to this hello. Let's run this program. Maybe it will make more sense when we see what happens. Okay, so let's go ahead and run the program. Okay, so it says, hello everyone, what is your name? So I'll go ahead and type, let me say Mustafa. Notice it allows me to type here because of the console.readline method. Now I'm going to press enter on my keyboard, and notice what happens. It says hello Mustafa. Okay, if whatever you write, let's close that and run this program again. Okay, so it says hello everyone, what is your name? And I say Samaritan. Okay, and I press enter. If that is my name, then it's going to say hello Samaritan. You see what's going on there. Okay, is that whatever the user types, it gets stored into this variable, and then this variable, whatever is inside that variable, is placed here and concatenated with hello. That is why whatever, using the same program, you can whatever it can take whatever input the user provides in the console. I hope this makes sense. I will try to stop here so this lesson doesn't get too long, but I just hope people understand what's going on in this lesson. I think to completely understand what we did in this lesson, I highly recommend you look at lesson 3 and see how you create variables and how you store variables, and that would make you understand more on what's going on in this line. That's where we say user is equal to console.readline, and then writing out this. So I'll go ahead and terminate this lesson here.